So let's talk about a rebellion that honestly was a complete failure, at least on the surface. But what's fascinating is that its failure ended up having these massive consequences, ripples that would change the entire course of American history for centuries. And it all boils down to one really powerful question.
Yeah, that's the real question, isn't it? How could a failed uprising back in 1676 end up defining the story of race in America? Because that's what this is really about. It's not just some dusty colonial revolt. No, it's about what happened after. How the fallout from this one event laid the foundation for a whole new kind of society, one built on a really powerful and frankly dangerous new idea.
All right, to really get what happened, you've got to picture Virginia in the 1670s. On paper, it's the biggest, richest English colony around. It's the crown jewel. But underneath all that, it was a total powder keg, a society that was just teetering on the edge, about to explode. So, what was the problem? Well, look no further than the economy. The whole colony was basically a one-trick pony, and that trick was tobacco. For a while, that was great. Prices were high. The big planters were getting filthy rich. But by the 1670s, the market was totally flooded. And you can see right here what that did to the price. It just fell off a cliff. And when your entire economy depends on one thing, and that thing becomes worthless, you get a lot of debt and a whole lot of desperation. And this wasn't just one group of people who were upset. This frustration was everywhere. You had your small farmers who were drowning in debt. You had indentured servants who'd finished their terms only to find there was no land, no opportunity for them. You had settlers on the frontier who felt completely ignored and unprotected. And you had Africans who were being forced into an ever harsher system. The point is, all these different people were getting squeezed by the same forces. They might have had different backgrounds, but they shared this powerful sense of being totally betrayed by the system. So all this tension, all this anger, it really came to a head and focused on two key figures. It's like a classic showdown, right? In one corner, you've got Governor William Berkeley. He's the ultimate insider, the elite guy running the whole show for the benefit of his rich buddies. And in the other corner, Nathaniel Bacon. He's the charismatic outsider, the newcomer who totally taps into all that frustration and becomes the people's champion. The stage is set. So you've got the pressure cooker of the economy. You've got a leader ready to rally the angry masses. The whole situation was just waiting to blow. It just needed one little spark. And you can bet Nathaniel Bacon was more than happy to be that spark. And when it happened fast. Incredibly fast. In the spring of '76, Bacon just ignores the governor's orders and starts attacking native villages. Fast forward to September, and his army, and get this, it's a mix of poor whites, servants, and even Africans, is so big and so powerful, they march right into the capital, Jamestown, and burn the whole place to the ground. The rebellion is at its peak. But then, literally just a month later, poof, Bacon dies. Not in battle, but of dysentery, of all things. Just like that. Okay, let's pause here because this is the absolute key to the whole story. For this one short, shocking moment, the entire social order was flipped on its head. You had poor white colonists and enslaved Africans, people who the system was designed to keep apart, standing shoulder to shoulder, fighting for the same thing. And let me tell you, the sight of that alliance, it sent a wave of pure terror through the colony's ruling class. So now Jamestown is just a pile of ashes, the rebellion's leader is dead, and everything is in chaos. For the elite, this was their moment. A chance to not just crush the rest of the rebels, but to make sure something like this could never, ever happen again. They learned a very scary lesson, and they were about to act on it. It's kind of ironic. The rebellion's greatest strength, having this one super charismatic leader, turned out to be its biggest weakness. The second Bacon was gone, the whole movement just fell apart. It fractured instantly. His followers were left scattered, totally disorganized, and completely vulnerable to the establishment's revenge. And that revenge was swift and it was brutal. Governor Berkeley came back with a vengeance, and he was determined to make an example of the rebels. Just look at this number. 23 people were executed. That wasn't just punishment. That was a message, loud and clear. Do not ever challenge our power again. Okay. So they put down the rebellion. The immediate threat was gone. But that fear did not go away. The wealthy planters couldn't shake that image of poor whites and Africans fighting together. It haunted them. And they knew they had to find a permanent solution. They had to figure out, how do we make absolutely sure that the poor and the powerless can never, ever unite against us like that again? What's the plan? Well, the solution they came up with That would become the rebellion's real and its most tragic legacy. They came to a chilling realization. If you can't reliably keep all the poor people down, then you have to find a way to divide them, turn them against each other.
And what they did was, honestly, both brilliant and deeply cynical. It was this great pivot. Look at this. Before, the main conflict was about class, right? It was the wealthy elite versus a united front of poor people, both white and black. So what did they do? They deliberately changed the game. They created a new dividing line, one based entirely on race. The new conflict became all whites versus all Africans. They essentially broke that powerful alliance by convincing poor whites that their real team was with the white elite, not with the black people standing next to them.
So, how they actually pulled this off? It was a calculated, step-by-step strategy. Step 1. You give some new perks and privileges to the poor whites. Maybe a little bit of land access, a tax break here and there, just enough to make them feel like they had a stake in the system, something to lose. Step 2. While you're lifting them up a little, you bring the hammer down on Africans. Pass a whole new set of brutal laws that make slavery permanent, hereditary, stripping away any little freedom they might have had. What you're doing is creating a powerful racial wedge and then driving it right down the middle of the lower classes. It's a classic case of divide and conquer.
And that, right there, is the big takeaway from all of this. The single most threatening part of the rebellion for the elite, that alliance between poor whites and Africans, became the very reason they built a whole new system, a system whose entire purpose was to make sure that alliance could never, ever happen again. And from that point on, racial division wasn't just a social issue, it became a tool, the key tool for maintaining power and control in America. So, at the end of it all, we're left with this huge, lingering question. You have to wonder, what if? What if Bacon hadn't suddenly died? What if that multiracial coalition of the poor had actually succeeded? Or even if it had just managed to stick together? It really makes you think, doesn't it? How incredibly different the entire story of class, race, and power in America could have been.